Shadow of the Erdtree has a lot of brand new spirit summons you can find throughout the DLC, and I'm going to quickly go over every single one of those locations and some of the more complex ones that you need to unlock. Spoiler warning now for those that don't want to be told where some of these spirit summons are, because they are linked to some quest lines. And with that out of the way, let's get into it. Now to start this video, we're going to focus on the ones that are related to the quest lines so you know what to look out for when you're going through these quest lines. First one is going to be for Jolan and Anna, and also just the base Jolan summon, which is related to the Ymir Finger quest line. This quest line is very lengthy, but all you need to know is that as you progress through the quest line and complete it, you'll end up seeing Jolan slumped against this pillar where you normally interact with her during this quest line. Now once you go through her conversation, you'll end up having two different options to give her an Iris of Grace or an Iris of Occultation. To get the summon, you need to use the Iris of Grace, and this is not the only NPC that is related to these two irises. I'll quickly cover the other NPC that is related to a summon with the Iris of Grace right after I show you all the locations for these two different irises, because you're going to need them. There are two different locations for each of the irises, so 4 irises in total. One of them for the Iris of Occultation is at Fort Reprimand. You're going to have to jump into a very particular location in Fort Reprimand to get the first one. So once you're in the center of Fort Reprimand in the main square area, you'll see something that looks like a well. Jump into this well and make your way down to where all these giant bodies are, and if this is your first time there, you'll see a bunch of different items. What you want to do is be prepared for the Omen Killer that will attack you. What you have to do is then defeat this Omen Killer, who is then going to drop that first Iris of Occultation. Simple enough. The second Iris of Occultation is from another enemy as well, but it's underneath the water inside of the Shadow Keep, so we have to lower the water first. From the prayer room where you're doing this questline, backtrack a little bit to where you jump down into this area and take a quick left to where you see a bunch of bats. From this, follow the pathing all the way until you come across a ladder that takes you up to a lever. As you might have guessed, this is going to be the lever that drops all the water inside of the Shadow Keep that will now open up an extra area of the Shadow Keep that you can't access any other way. Now all the water is gone, go back down the ladder and you'll see that the archway that used to have a ton of water in it no longer has water. What you want to do is jump down into this area. This is the brand new area that is now available to you inside the Shadow Keep, and go into the first ransacked house. You're going to see a site of grace that will be our starting point moving forward. Now from this side of grace, you essentially wanted to get to the other side of this area where you can see more ransacked giant houses, giant old churches, however you want to describe them. And what you want to do in this area, when you get to the other side, you'll actually eventually get attacked by an enemy. This enemy is going to be one of those annoying tree sentinels that swings a ton and it bursts a bunch of flames around it. You have to defeat this enemy to get the second Iris of Occultation. Now with the 2 Irises of Occultation, let's go after the Irises of Grace. From that same area that we just started for the previous Iris of Occultation, the Sunken Chapel side of Grace, follow the pathing I'm showing you, which leads you to a very long elevator. At the end of this elevator, you'll come across another site of grace. This site of grace will be a nice little starting point for you. This is the Tree Worship Passage site of grace. This also gets you over to one of the Remembrance bosses if you haven't been here before. But to stay on topic for the Iris of Grace, simply just follow the path forward and you'll come across a hidden church that's going to have another giant statue of America that will at the foot of it have the Iris of Grace. Now for the second Iris of Grace, you want to make your way to the Storehouse first floor site of grace inside of the Shadow Keep. From this side of grace, you want to go to the left where you see another set of small enemies. Behind the small group of enemies, you're going to come across another elevator that you want to take all the way down. At the bottom, you want to take an immediate right and follow the pathing I'm showing you, because there's a couple different locations you can go to. But the main idea that we want to do is get to this large open area where you see a bunch of pots. At the end of this room, you're going to see a purple item behind an enemy. This is your second Iris of Grace. So now that you have the Jolan summon, after getting all the different irises and giving her the Iris of Grace, you can upgrade this to the Jolan and Anna summon. To do this, make your way over to the Shaman Village and down the cliffside to where you can jump onto a small balcony inside of Rabbit's Rise. Inside of this location, which can be somewhat difficult to get onto, you're going to actually end up seeing a puppet that you can interact with. Now, if you don't have the Jolan summon at this point, it's just going to act as if you're just interacting with a random item inside of the game. But if you do have the Jolan summon already, you will be prompted to usher in Anna into that very same Spirit Ash, that very same summon, and then you're going to have the upgraded version of the Jolan and Anna summon, which is way stronger than just the Jolan summon at its base form. So now that you have a few different irises, you can go on to the next NPC I was talking about earlier, Fire Knight Keelan, and I'm probably butchering his name, but as you progress through his quest line, you will find him inside of the prayer room in the Shadow Keep. I have a full quest line guide if you want to follow that as well to get to this point, but just know as you complete his quest line and find him in this prayer room, you have the availability to give him the Iris of Grace or the Iris of Occultation, and to get his summon, you need to use the Iris of Grace. So now that the two most difficult summons to get are taken care of, let's go to the other summons throughout the game that are much easier to get. Make your way to the Belrat jail to get the Demi-Human Swordmaster Yosh summon. Now thankfully all you have to do is get to the end of this jail and interact with the boss of this jail, the Demi-Human Swordmaster Ons, and defeat Ons. Once you have defeated Ons, it will automatically drop for you this brand new summon, which it pretty much is an exact replica of this mini boss that you have to fight. The summon walks very slow but does teleport around all the time and gets behind your enemies pretty quickly, so it's a great distracting summon. Next we're going to cover the Mesmer Soldier summon's location. You make your way over to Fort Reprimand inside of the plateau area of the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC, and thankfully after you get to this location it's not that difficult to get these summons. All you have to do is get to the main courtyard. You'll see something that looks like a well that you want to jump into. You'll go into a giant pit full of bodies. You will see an Omen Killer in this location that you can defeat if you want to. Highly recommend that you do if you want an Iris of Occultation. Once again, run past this guy if you want to, or defeat him into this small area where you see a couple tombstones. In this area you're going to see at the back tombstone is going to be an item. That item is going to be the summon that we're looking for, the Mesmer Soldier Ashes. Now usually I don't find the Soldier summon Ashes very useful, but the Mesmer Soldiers have come in use a couple times in my opinion, so definitely fun to use in some situations. Next let's move over to the Shadow Keep, more particularly the Storehouse Loft Side of Grace, which you'll come across as you progress through the Shadow Keep in and of itself. We're going to go after Fire Knight Hilda's summon. Now this area can be very janky to go through, so do your best to follow my pathing, but your main goal is to get to the other side of where this loft, this Side of Grace is. Now there are a couple different paths you can use to actually get to this location. This is just one that I found to be very straightforward and very simple for my brain, so hopefully it does the same thing for you. What you want to keep in mind though is when you go over here for the first time, there's going to be a Fire Knight with a couple different moves that's going to try and knock you off these beams to instantly kill you. You absolutely want to get rid of this Fire Knight because it's going to be damn near impossible to actually get this summon until you do. Now that you've killed this Fire Knight, interact with the different elevators to make the one that's normally there go down, and then you want to have it raised back up so you can jump over to this body that has a purple item on it, which is going to be Fire Knight Hilda's summon. A little more complicated than you would like to actually get a summon in this game, but it's still a fun one to use in my opinion, especially with all the different fire attacks. Definitely one worth upgrading. Moving over to the surrounding areas of the Shadow Keep, let's go after the Black Knight Commander Andreas summon. You want to make your way over to the Fog Rift Catacombs, which is not too difficult to get to. As you progress through this particular catacomb, you want to get to the first set of the spikes that fall down, and then follow my pathing as best as possible, because just like a lot of different catacombs in Shadow of the Erdtree, it can get confusing very quickly. Once you get to the room of second spikes that you can jump on top of, it should be very straightforward. Run through the corridor until you come across a Black Knight and some of the Mesmer Soldiers. At this point, you want to go to where the open room is, get close enough to the edge where the spikes fall down, jump on top of them, and go into a corridor that you can see on the edge, where you're going to see another set of catacombs where you're going to eventually see a purple item that has the summon we're looking for. Definitely one of the tankier ones you can get in Shadow of the Erdtree. I don't think personally it's the tankiest, but it's still a fun one to use every now and then. Making our way over to the other Black Knight Captain, Black Knight Captain Q, we're going to make our way to the Scorpion River Catacombs, which is underneath the Rao Ancient Ruins. Now thankfully, unlike the other location where we had to jump onto a bunch of different spike traps, this one's more straightforward. You basically just have to progress this entire catacomb until you get to an area where there's two sets of spike traps. Feel free to take your time through these catacombs if you haven't gone through them before, but when you do get to the particular area where there are two different spike traps, and it'll be very obvious when you actually get there, be careful of them, because there's going to be a couple different things in addition to these two giant spike traps that are going to try and kill you, like the one right next to the corridor we need to run down where you see a giant sarcophagus where you're going to get the Black Knight Captain Hugh summon. This is a much more aggressive facing summon than some of the other ones that you'll find on this list, but I definitely think it's one that you don't want to use too often because he charges in and dies really quickly. Moving on to an interesting one, this is how you can get the Blood Fiend Hexer summon. All you have to do is get to the end of a particular cave inside of Shadow of the Erdtree, and you have to fight this Chief Blood Fiend, who is actually a lot more difficult if you're on a higher New Game Plus than you might assume, especially because he does a lot of bleed damage. Thankfully, the Blood Fiend Hexer's Ashes does the same exact thing, but the blood damage buildup is about the only positive of this particular Ash, so it's something that I want to be gunning for if you want to try and find something that does blood damage. It's definitely an interesting one to use every now and then. Definitely not my top pick on this list though. And the cave to actually get this fight and this particular summon is the Rivermouth Cave, which is just south of the Templetown Ruins. Again, a very easy location to get to once you jump down the waterfall, using the giant tombstones right next to that waterfall. Next is definitely one of the more annoying ways to get one of those summons. It's going to be the Cannon Imp summon, and you're going to go to the particular catacombs that I'll be showing you in a second and progress until you come across this giant Cannon Imp. You can defeat this thing a couple different ways, but what I recommend is go into the corridor right across from this giant imp, put it down onto the ground using that lever that I just showed you a second ago, and defeating it one-on-one. Now, defeating this imp doesn't actually give you the summon that we're going after, but it does open up the way to actually getting the summon that we're looking for. You also want to defeat this thing because it does drop something that helps you upgrade the ghost summons to their final level of level 10. You'll see the gold item is dropped, but what you want to focus on is jumping down from where you just lowered this path, because you're going to see a chest in the back of the room. As you probably guessed at this point, this chest is actually going to have the Cannon Imp summon inside of there, and unfortunately the Cannon Imp isn't all that great. It's really squishy, just like the regular ones you come across, so it's not something that I recommend using. You are more than welcome to try and use it if you want, but this is just my opinion on this one. Moving on to a different jail now is going to be the Bonnie Jail just outside of Bonnie Village, over the little bridge that is right south of Bonnie Village. What you want to do is get to the very end of this particular jail, and you'll actually come across one of the curse blades that turns the entire arena pitch black. Now, as you probably guessed by now, all you have to do is defeat this mini boss and you will automatically be given the Curse Blade Mira Spirit Summon. I think it's a very interesting one. It jumps around, not as much as the Spirit Summon of Yosh, but it does jump around a lot more than all the other summons in the DLC, but it is a lot squishier than I would like to see for the Curse Blades, because some of them are really annoying to fight against inside of this DLC, but it is what it is. You can experiment with the summon as much as you like and see if it actually ends up working for your build or not. Now, this next one is actually a lot easier to get to than it might seem. It's just well hidden. What you want to do is make your way over the Temple Town ruins and follow the pathing over some spirit jumps. And another nice thing that I like about this very particular summons location is that it really is just based on the spirit jumps and you making sure that you go to the right location. So when you get to these particular spirit jumps just north of the Temple Town ruins, you'll see these little broken parts of a castle that you want to jump across to go across a ledge. From there, it's extremely straightforward. Follow the pathing that's in front of you. There will be a chest inside of a small crevice inside of the mountainside. Open it and you will have the Divine Burn Ornus Spirit Summon. Definitely one of my more favorite spirit summons, mainly because he flies and is very aggressive while hitting very hard against a lot of different enemies. Not great against different remembrance bosses, but definitely one I recommend using. Next, we're going to have arguably the worst one on this entire list in terms of the summons. You make your way over the Fingerstone Hill inside of the location that you can go to by going through the Ymir's questline, and follow the pathing as best as possible, because this location is very easy to miss because you're jumping into a small crevice in this giant area that's covered in green fog. While you're going to the location that I am marking for you on the map with the blue dot and following you through the pathing, you're getting attacked by a lot of different hands, and when you get down to this location, you'll see nothing but an item, and a giant hand is going to attack you when you go after that item. As you may have guessed, this is going to be the Finger Creeper Ashes right in front of that giant hand. It is super squishy. It does hardly any damage. I do not recommend using this. Now, this next location is going to be very easy to get this particular spirit ash. Is going to be the Gravebird Ash summon inside of Charon's Hidden Grave, and that's going to be the side of grace that we're going to start with. Follow my pathing, and I'm going to speed it up a fair bit because it's on the exact opposite side of Charon's Hidden Grave section of the entire Shadow of the Erdtree DLC, and just because there's a lot of different things that I killed here that you'll probably come across as you explore this area, that'll be a nice surprise for you when you actually get there. But to help make sure you actually get to the location, you will see a spirit jump right at the edge of a giant cliff face, and then you'll see a body with an item on it towards the top of another cliff. This is going to be the spirit summon that we're looking for. Unfortunately, the Gravebird Ashes are about on par with the Finger Creeper Ashes. It does have a lot more health, but it staggers so easily against any attacks. I also don't recommend using this. Next, we're going to go after the Manfly summon, and the closest site of grace that can get you to the location we're going is the Recluse's River downstream site of grace. Man, that is hard to say 5 times fast. Now, actually getting down to the Manfly City where this Spirit Ash is going to be is not difficult at all. From the Recluse's River downstream site of grace, simply follow the cliffside down until you get to a somewhat open area in between the cliffs. Once you get to this area, you want to hug the cliff to the right until you see another opening that takes you back up the mountainside, and you're going to want to go to the right even more until you see that there's going to be a giant body of a Manfly that's going to have an item on it that you want to pick up. This is going to be the summon that we're looking for. Now, the only positive I have for this particular Manfly Ash Spirit summon is the fact that they have a couple different Manflies at once, so it has a little bit more of a distraction than others. Outside of that, it's not great. Moving over to the Spider Scorpion summon, we're going to want to make our way over into the Rao Agent Ruins, more specifically into the section right next to the beginning of the Rao Agent Ruins. This won't be too difficult to find because there will be a spider scorpion in front of all these different bodies around you with different items. One of these bodies towards the back of the group is going to have an ash on it that has a spider scorpion ash, and about the only positive that I have for this particular summon is the fact that it distracts the enemy pretty quickly. Outside of that, it's not very strong. Our next summon is going to be Telu the Golem Smith, and you can find him at the very end of Telu's Ruin Forge, just north of the Templetown Ruins, which we've visited once or twice already inside of this video. All you simply have to do is get to the end of this forge, which is not very difficult, and interact with the forge at the end. You will automatically get this summon, and I think he's one of the more fun summons to use in Shadow of the Erdtree, mainly because of how tanky he is. He's by far the most tanky summon in this entire list, in my opinion, especially when you get him to level 10, and he also shoots his fists from a distance, which definitely makes it very easy for other enemies to aggro onto him. A great summon to use. Moving on to the final locations inside of this list, you want to make your way to Ener Limb Spiral Rise Site of Grace, and from here it's very simple to get to the Inquisitor Ashes summon. Make your way back down the giant staircase that you used to actually get to this site of Grace, and take the left path until you can go underneath this staircase where you'll find a body that has these ashes on it. Now these ones are kind of hard for me to describe how you could best use, in my honest opinion, about them, because they have come in handy in certain occasions with their distance attack, but at the same time they're not that strong, so do with it what you will. Now the final summon in this list is going to be also from the Spiral Rise Site of Grace. It's going to be the Horned Warrior Ashes location. This one can be a little easy to overlook, but if you follow the pathing I'm showing you from this Site of Grace, you'll find a nice hidden section in this Ener Limb, the final locations inside of Shadow of the Erdtree, along with this Spirit Summon, and again all the different little items around this area. Now when you get to this particular set of ledges, you'll see another set of stairs just below the stairs that you want to jump on into and enter into the doorway right in front of you. You're going to see a bunch of different items, but one of these bodies will have the Horned Warrior Ashes on them. Definitely one of the stronger summons you can get in Shadow of the Erdtree. I want to put it as the best. I'd probably put it middle tier. It's definitely fun to use though with some of its abilities. Now that was a lot of locations very quickly, so I appreciate every single one of you that got to the end of this video. If you did find it helpful, as always with my videos, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button so you know that you did find it helpful, and let me know down in the comments which one of these summons you like the most. Again, I don't think all these summons are going to be the best summons, but there are some that are a lot of fun to use, specifically in Shadow of the Erdtree, in my opinion. Now once again, I hope you guys found this long-winded location guide helpful, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.